Welcome to this presentation about the Mesopotamian marshlands in southern Iraq, which describes their situation and current threats and opportunities. The presentation is divided into 4 parts. First, you will have an introduction to the history of the marshlands, which explains 3 historical periods in recent decades and provides the background to understand their current situation. It then focuses on 3 important systemic elements: the natural, socio-economic, and institutional systems. The following part will present the challenges currently being faced, before ending with actions being undertaken to address these challenges. Before looking at the history of the marshlands, let us consider for a moment their different functions. As you can see, they are essential for the livelihoods of the indigenous communities that live in them, as well as constituting a renowned biodiversity hotspot. They have cultural value, provide water for irrigation, and play a role in the prevention of local and regional sand and dust storms, as well as offering a platform for transboundary collaboration through information sharing, given the transboundary nature of some of them and of the waters that feed into them. The map on this slide shows the extent of the marshlands in 1973, when they represented approximately 20,000 square kilometers. They are located where the Euphrates and Tigris rivers meet in southern Iraq and are considered to be the largest wetland in the Middle East. Their position there has made them a stopover point for many migratory birds, and their ecosystem is important to human life locally, in addition to their environmental importance. As mentioned previously, 3 periods mark the history of the marshlands in the previous decades. The first ends at the beginning of the 1980s and marks the period during which the surface of the marshlands was at its widest. The second is from the 1980s to 2000, when the marshes were dried out, which caused substantial degradation. The third starts in 2004, when efforts to restore them by reflooding them were initiated, and the Center for the Restoration of the Iraqi Marshes was established. This slide illustrates the difference between the 3 periods in terms of the geographical boundaries of some of the marshes and the visible impact as shown on the pictures at the bottom. We now move to the systemic presentation of the marshes based on integrated water resources management with the 3 elements: the natural, socio-economic, and institutional systems. We begin the examination of the natural system with a focus on the hydrological aspects. To be able to control the water in the marshlands, a control system is in place through water control structures, regulators in different places throughout the marshes. The monitoring system deals with discharge, water level, and climate-related data. A study including flood and drought control elements has been prepared to support the development of a management plan. This slide shows a schematic diagram of the marshlands. We talk about marshlands. In fact, they are divided into different marshes rather than being one united surface. The Abu Zarak marsh is the most western, with the central marshes next to them. The Hammar marsh is divided into western and eastern part. In the east, the Sanaf marsh is located above the Huwayza marsh, which lies on the border with Iran. This diagram also shows a number of structures: inlets, outlets, regulators, and others. As you can see on the slide, these control structures are located throughout the marshlands and facilitate the control and management of water in and between the different marshes. The quantity of water is monitored throughout the marshes using the monitoring stations in the feeders of the marshes illustrated on the bottom left of this slide. The map shows where they are located, and the graph shows a monthly inflow average between 2011 and 2018. The 4 maps on this slide show the evolution of the area of the marshes between 2002 and 2013 and the impact of the restoration. The graph below with the target area is the target area identified for recovery in the management plan, which is discussed in the next slide. The marshlands have been taken into account in management plans, and a master plan, the New Eden, was prepared in 2006. 4 scenarios with different recovery options and percentages were identified, with the preferred scenario being a 50% to 75% recovery. Data gathering was considered key to achieving the goals of the plan, and immediate actions identified included stakeholder involvement and the formulation of a restoration program and a program focused on the human emergency caused by water quality and availability issues. The table, diagram, and map on the slide relate to the 50% to 75% recovery target. The marshlands are also part of the 2014 Strategy for Water and Land Resources. It provides that a minimum of 5.314 billion cubic meters should be allocated to them, with an equal allocation to all marshes, and a minimum of 3.88 billion cubic meters in case of drought. The management plan requires the implementation of a number of projects, which are listed on this slide. The environment is also an important part of the natural system of the marshlands. There are 2 areas of environmental focus: water quality and biodiversity. The graph shows the different instruments supporting both. Biodiversity is monitored throughout the marshlands. Stations are located throughout the area, as can be seen on the map, on which stations are indicated by a red diamond-shaped point. Mammals, fish and plants are monitored. The graphs to the right show the evolution between 1962 and 2009 for fish, and 2004 and 2014 for mammals. This slide includes other species also monitored: birds, amphibians, and reptiles. Zoo and phytoplankton are also included. A number of laws and legal instruments apply to the marshlands. They relate mainly to the environment, but also to energy, labour law, various environmental standards, as well as international conventions. The 1971 Ramsar Convention on Wetlands of International Importance and the 1972 UNESCO Convention concerning the protection of the world cultural and natural heritage. Some activities are not covered by laws. Hunting is one of them. Impact assessments were conducted between 2013 and 2015, mainly related to the oil sector. Environmental studies have also been conducted. The social and economic system of the marshlands is important. It supports those who live there and whose livelihoods depend on them. Without sufficient water, they may not be able to sustain their livelihoods, and there is a possibility they will migrate. Supporting activities, including, for instance, handicraft, can help contribute to local livelihoods. Different actions are required to operationalize this support: community participation and awareness, developing infrastructure, and supporting small projects. Field tours have been organised to highlight the needs, and during recent droughts, water was brought to mitigate their impact. Water buffaloes are symbolic of the marshes, and their husbandry spreads throughout the area, as can be seen on this map. Fishing and agriculture take place in and around the marshes. The maps show where this is happening in the Haweza marshes. It is important to know where they are taking place and what they entail for management purposes. Let us now turn to the institutional system with its national and international management. Its central body is the Center for the Restoration of the Iraqi Marshes and Wetlands, shortened to CRIMW, established in 2004 and located within the Ministry of Water Resources. This slide lists its main functions. Carrying out duties under the Ramsar Convention is an important institutional component of the marshlands. 3 of the marshes have been designated as protected areas: the Haweza, Hammar, and Central Marshes. CRIMW has a central role to play in carrying out Ramsar obligations listed on the slide. It coordinates the activities mentioned with the other entities indicated: the Iraqi Media Network, the Ministry of Higher Education, and the Ministry of Health and Environment. The sites included on the World Heritage List include 4 natural sites: the Haweza, East Hammar, West Hammar, and the Central Marshes. There are also 3 cultural heritage sites, so altogether 7 sites. Carrying out duties under the World Heritage Convention is an important institutional component of the marshlands. The body responsible for implementing the convention is the Higher Committee for the Implementation Plan of the Ahwar of Southern Iraq as a World Heritage Site. It is composed of different stakeholders, governmental and non-governmental. NGOs represent the inhabitants of the marshes. The committee is led by the Ministry of Water Resources. The marshlands face a number of significant challenges related to 4 areas: climate change, increased water demand, reduced flow, and international conventional requirements. The following slides detail these 4 areas. In very recent years, as illustrated on this slide, Iraq and the marshlands have faced very dry conditions and floods related to climate change. The graph on this slide is drawn from the 2014 strategy and shows the discrepancy between water availability and demand in the event no reforms are undertaken. Areas of increased demand are municipal and industrial needs, irrigation, fish farms, the environment, and the oil sector. Reduced water availability will impact the marshlands. The absence of agreements with neighbouring riparians means that minimum flows necessary to sustain natural values of the marshes are not legally secured. The pictures at the top left show the impact of reduced flows on the marshes. These have been attributed to activities upstream, including the diversion of the Karkhe River in Iran and climate change events. Additional challenges relating to international conventions apply. The marshlands come under 2 conventions, Ramsar and the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Convention, which have different requirements. Additionally, the UNESCO obligations are stronger than the Ramsar ones. This is creating management challenges. Having considered the challenges, we turn now to opportunities which describe actions being taken to address the challenges. As mentioned on this slide, studies relating to water resources management nationally are being updated. Internationally, the CPET, funded by the Swedish organization SIDA, ran from 2014 to 2019. Its purpose was to improve dialogue and trust in the management of transboundary waters in the Euphrates and Tigris region, and to generate and use commonly agreed evidence-based information on Euphrates and Tigris regional water uses and services. For the Marshlands component, led by the American University of Beirut, the objective was to identify the main factors leading to marshland degradation, determine the impacts of marshland loss, and devise solutions to ensure successful restoration. As regards drought management, a number of planning and implementing activities listed on the slide have been carried out in an effort to mitigate how droughts might affect the marshlands. Similar measures have been put in place regarding flood management. Transboundary matters are the subject of ongoing efforts to establish agreements with neighboring riparians. This slide highlights other efforts in an international context, whether joining activities to encourage the implementation of the 1997 Convention, adhering to the 1992 Convention, joining international conferences, and finally Ramsar-related initiatives. Measures are also being taken for the protection of the marshes, as you can see from this slide. Finally, different institutional measures are also being taken to ensure the oil and gas industry, which is active around the marshes, does not cause negative impacts on them. This is important in the context of obligations under the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Convention, which prevents oil-related activities in the marshes. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please contact Ms. Zahra of CRIMW, who played a central role in preparing this presentation, at the address indicated below, or contact me at either of my addresses, also indicated on this slide.